surely one for the history books, and the Ahmed family album. It's a photograph of Nigel Farage stood next to two billionaires, one of them Elon Musk, at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate.
Amazing. The ex-owner is reported to be considering a donation of possibly up to $100 million. That's 78 million of our English pounds. Donation to Farage's Reform Party. But is there a risk with billionaires running politics?
Probably yes. And we're going to discuss the impact on Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch of that big meeting in Florida. And hearing from Ben Riley-Smith, the political editor, who was on a frigate in Estonia with the Prime Minister and did an exclusive interview.
Politics is all now a three-way fight, and we'll be getting to the bottom of it. Welcome to the Daily Tea with me, Kamal Ahmed.
And me, Camilla Tominey. Kamal, what did you make of the photo then? Isn't there an irony? The Prime Minister goes out to Estonia. He sets up a series of interviews and nobody's talking about it because everyone's talking about Farage at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate with Elon Musk. He then accompanied... So we did the story on it. It was overwhelmed with comments, wasn't it? Up to 7,000 comments. And on a good day, if you get 2,000 comments on a story, you're laughing. Then he writes a comment piece basically saying, Britain's broken, politics is broken, I'm the only one that can fix it, but with Elon Musk's money. And I don't know how comfortable people are with this.
Let's get into Keir Starmer a bit later and Ben Riley-Smith, because I think there are some really important things to say about the inability of Keir Starmer to lead the news agenda. His piece also focused not only on Britain is broken, but also he has come back, he said, with copious notes from how Elon Musk affected or influenced the US presidential election. Elon Musk spent over $200 million supporting Donald Trump and using the X platform particularly to boost messages that were helpful to Donald Trump and the Republicans that supported Donald Trump and anti-Kamala Harris. He's also been accused of sharing conspiracy theories about Kamala Harris and the Democrats and issues that Democrats were campaigning on. And he also set up what's called a political action committee in the swing states, the 7 swing states that Donald Trump needed to win to become president-elect of the United States. And he very controversially paid out $1 million cash sums to registered Republican voters, which was very controversial in America. So clearly, for Elon Musk, and I think this gets then to your point, Camilla, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this question of influence. His money comes with political strings attached because, of course, he's been hired on this big efficiency campaign by Trump to make the government in America far smaller. And he was literally on the telephone call between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, to discuss the end of the Russia-Ukraine war. So it's not as if he gives the money and then lets the party get on with it. He actually demands some positions of power that come with that money.
I'm in two minds about the whole thing. On one hand, I really admire Elon Musk as a hugely successful businessman. And I think what he's done with Tesla particularly, let alone shooting rockets into space, is hugely impressive. Clearly the guy is a polymath. Many think he's a genius, and he has got clear, discernible talents. Does he have a place in British politics? The problem for Reform is surely, and I have said this to both Zia Youssef, the chairman, and the Reform MP Rupert Lowe, I thought your organisation, your party, was meant to be sort of anti-globalism and anti-international interference. If somebody that they didn't agree with was going to plough 100 million, it was going to plough nearly 80 million quid into the Labour Party, let's just say if it was Dale Vince, say if Dale Vince had Musk types of money and he was going to make a donation like this, I think Reform and Reform...
He's the big eco-campaigner and businessman,
Yeah. I think Reform and Reform supporters would have a problem with it. You always have to ask yourself, what does he get in return for this investment? I admire anybody wanting to keep a conversation alive on the right. I do agree with this kind of premise that actually our institutions have become at times overtaken by left-wing dogma, and that right-wing voices have been closed out. They've been accused of being bigots and racists and white supremacists. And we've had a situation where things weren't on an even keel. So the reason I work for GB News is that I believe in everybody having a voice and nobody being shut down and us having the debates. Obviously, people think X has gone too far. I believe in reform's right to exist, to challenge the Tories, to challenge Labour, even to challenge the Lib Dems, the Greens and the others, okay? But 80 million quid?
That would completely dwarf anything that's ever been given as a political donation in the UK. Frank Hester is the biggest donor to the Conservatives. He's given £20 million over a number of years.
Lord Sainsbury, I think, gave 10 million, and that was considered a whopper donation.
The Conservative Lord Sainsbury. There's another Lord Sainsbury,
David
Lord Sainsbury, obviously, who gave to Labour, but Jonathan Sainsbury, the Conservative donor, he's given 10 million. But if Elon Musk comes in with up to 80 million, which as a foreign national, there are rules in the United Kingdom which were put in place by Tony Blair to stop foreign donations because of the belief and various scandals that they were trying to buy political influence. We were talking just a couple of days ago, Camilla, about China. How does China try and use soft power to buy influence? Foreign donors are stopped from doing direct donations. So if Elon Musk was ever to make this donation, he'd have to do it via one of the British branches of his American companies. And it's not quite the same as Dale Vince. Dale Vince is a Brit, and he is here, and he pays his taxes here, and he has some position there. But I think...
But hang on, Musk and China, though, come on, Kamal. You know, China is a communist...
We're discussing
influence. We're
discussing a lack of transparency.
It's not the same as Musk.
We're talking about a lack of transparency. We're talking about there are rules there to stop. What I'm talking about, I'm not saying that Musk and China are the same, but we are. There's always been controversy around foreign influence of whatever type, Middle East, China, America, billionaires, whoever it might be. We have taken a position in the UK, which I think most voters agree with, that UK elections are about UK people. They're people here. There should be donations done, but they should be done from this country. And if we imagine that image that we're talking about, which is the picture of Elon Musk with Nigel Farage and Nick Candy, and you put in the place of Nigel Farage Keir Starmer, and you put in the place of Elon Musk Bill Gates, would people be saying, well, hang on a minute, what is Bill Gates trying to buy here?
But people are saying that anyway. I mean, I'd look at that and, you know...
you would be comfortable with that?
No, well, I would be comfortable with it in the sense that if it is allowed within the rules. What's happened here is people that don't agree with Nigel Farage are against this, and people who do agree with him are for it, in the same way that people who don't agree with Dale Vince because they think he's an eco-zealot on a par with Ed Miliband, don't like the influence that he's exerted on the Labour Party because they think this is all about, we either have no high net worth individuals having any sway at all with the money that they give, or we don't. Do you see what I mean? Like, people have a problem with a donor if they don't agree with the donor. Because they say it'll influence things against my principles.
No, I think it's a principle. I think if Bill Gates came in, he gave $50 million to the Kamala Harris campaign. I would have exactly the same problem with Bill Gates using a British subsidiary of his financial interests in America to donate a huge amount of money to Keir Starmer, which is presumably the party that he would more generally support. If George Soros gave a huge amount of money, I think it is scale. I don't think it is the same. I don't think that it is the same when someone comes in with such an amount of money that would completely change the way politics happened here. I think if there's an equality of weaponry, if you want to talk about it like that, then maybe there's a discussion to be had. But if you think of someone like Elon Musk, the difference for someone like Elon Musk is that he owns a platform to communicate, and it's one of the most important election platforms, X.
Yeah.
So the millions of people, the billions of people who see Elon Musk's tweets, and if they come in pro one party during an election campaign. There have been allegations that X deliberately promoted Elon Musk and pro-Trump tweets against pro-Kamala Harris tweets. That becomes something that undermines trust in the way that we do politics. It's not the same, frankly, as Dale Vince or Jonathan Sainsbury or Frank Hester. They have no means to communicate a message in the way that Elon Musk can.
Counter argument to that, I guess, is only 18% of the population are on Twitter, /X. So to what extent do we think that Elon Musk, via the medium of his social media channel, can change hearts and minds among the electorate? Because at the end of the day, if over the course of the next 4 years we continue to see this momentum behind Nigel Farage, it may well be aided by huge social media campaigns. But let's look at Nigel Farage as an individual with his own social media following. It's far, far, far larger than Starmer's and Badenoch's. It totally eclipses them. And yet he did get elected to Clacton, but Reform have only got 5 MPs. Like, at what point do we take away the agency of the electorate in all this? It could just be, with or without Musk's money and his help, that Farage continues on this trajectory and ends up, I mean, do you think he can be Prime Minister?
Well, we've discussed this. I think it was a vanishing chance pre the last election, and now it's a possibility. And I think money will make a difference. We've spoken, both of us, haven't we, Camilla, as you say, to Zia Youssef. You've spoken to him, as have I. But Tim Montgomery was on the podcast, and we asked him directly about Elon Musk money and influence, and he was certainly very open to it. And Zia Youssef said to us that Reform's principles were already there. It was already a brand, and Elon Musk couldn't affect it. I think they are in dangerous territory here, that a lot of British voters will find it, as you say, this is a party which is supposedly all about the UK and our values and how we do politics. And here is a billionaire person with huge influence. I think there is something about proportionality. Reform should be allowed to raise money. Of course they should, as the other big parties are able to. But when it becomes something that is such a change in the amount, that's where I have concerns.
I mean, if Reform gets close to power or is somehow in coalition with the Tories next time round to sort of channel some kind of Telegraph right-wing fantasy, perhaps, then I suppose one could be concerned if you then think that Musk might be influencing digital policy, right? But then you could have the same concerns right now about Vince and whether Miliband's solar panels and pylon quest has anything to do with the fact that he's received this money from an eco-warrior. So it's always there, isn't it?
The key point, though, is, Camilla, what are we talking about today? We're talking about, as you say, not the Keir Starmer interview he's done with our brilliant political editor, Ben Riley Smith, but we're talking about Nigel Farage, Elon Musk. He has certainly, if you think of the 3 people fighting for our attention in politics at the moment are Nigel Farage, Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch. Nigel Farage has got all the momentum, and with Elon Musk, he could have this huge bazooka, which would genuinely change political discussion in the UK. But let's get on to
You're saying
Keir Starmer.
that Elon Musk has given him rocket fuel. Let's be honest.
When he gets to Mars.
He has got access to rocket fuel, so that's useful. Again, Keir Starmer finds himself in a political conundrum. You know, he's now having to tell the Telegraph, oh, you know, don't worry, we won't put taxes up too much because we've realised that it's caused economic calamity, which we covered earlier this week. This WASPI women thing, that's a spectacular own goal, isn't it, by Labour? So these are a group of female pensioners that basically had their pension age changed. And as a result, they weren't adequately prepared. So they finished work too early. There was a gap between them finishing work and them being able to claim their state pension. That left them out of pocket, in some cases to the tune of tens of thousands of pounds. How long has this been going on, Kamal? We've been covering WASPI women for probably a decade or more. Successive governments have kicked the can down the road. The trouble for Labour is they've decided, Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, has turned around and said, no, we aren't going to give any compensation because I don't know if you've noticed, there's a 22 billion black hole in the finances. It would cost 10.5 billion to compensate these women. So bad luck, which would be okay if it weren't for the fact that Labour has been campaigning for the last decade to give these WASPI women some compensation.
I am literally looking at the website of Liz Kendall, the present Work and Pensions Cabinet Minister, who made the announcement that these women were going to get nothing. On her website, Liz reaffirms commitment to the WASPI campaign. I will work with WASPI to identify and deliver a fair solution for all women affected. So the fair solution was £0, which doesn't seem very fair to many people. And it goes back to the tax point you've just made and the tax point that Ben pushed Keir Starmer on. I don't think the public are going to believe a word of, we really don't want to come back for more taxes. You kind of said all that before the election and look what happened. You look at the WASPI women, all these things are connected. And then this morning, Rushanara Ali, she's a junior minister for housing, and she was going to be discussing on the morning media round homelessness policy. But of course, because of the way Labour is operating in saying one thing and doing another, all she was asked about was the WASPI women reverse that Labour had just put in place. But let's hear how awkward that makes Labour politicians. She was grilled about it on the Today programme by Justin Webb.
Just on this specific issue, does it not damage trust in politics when you give the impression, Angela Rayner, for instance, called this stolen money when she was in opposition. You give the impression to people that they are going to receive financial compensation. The Ombudsman says they should receive financial compensation, and then when it comes to it, you don't do it. It's a trust in politics issue, isn't it?
Well, look, there were a set of commitments that were made pre-19 election. We lost 2019 election. We lost that election. What we have in
yes, but you carried on
report,
campaigning with these women.
What we have in this report is a set of findings, and that's what's being responded to. But the point about compensation is that we don't feel that it would be a fair and proportionate response of putting some £10 billion in response to that. And that is the judgment call the Secretary of State has made.
You can just tell in the syntax there that she's struggling because she doesn't actually believe what she's saying.
I don't believe they do believe it, yeah. You're absolutely right.
And it wasn't just Keir Starmer and indeed Liz Kendall. We had the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, as well, exactly banging the drum, saying that these pensions had been stolen from the WASPI women.
Yep.
Very silent today, though, dear Ange. What surprises me, though, is why can't Kemi Badenoch capitalise on this?
So she's the third person in this battle for your votes. So let's move on to her. You're so right. Yeah.
She's at PMQs. It starts positively.
Yeah, we're watching it together.
We're watching it together earlier. She says to Starmer, what about these WASPI women? You've U-turned. But then in the same question asks another question about the winter fuel allowance. Kemi, I'm lecturing her almost like a journalist, but if you were going to do this in an interview, right, like Justin Webb just has with Ali, you say to Starmer, oh, so you're not compensating WASPI women when you promised you would. I would put in this line, this is the politics of Marxism 2024, except it's not Carl, it's Groucho. These are my principles, and if you don't like them...
Big cheer and laughing.
Thank you so much. I shall put on a fake moustache. Here are my principles, and if you don't like them, don't worry, because I have others, okay? Instead, she says too much. This is her trouble.
She went through, we were watching it together and we were both having this conversation a little earlier today for Prime Minister's questions. She started with WASPI women and we both said, good, that's the subject to go on because it is really awkward and it gets into trust, which is the big problem for Labour. Then she went into the winter food allowance and then she went into Brexit.
Yeah,
those are three sort of completely different issues. And this is the problem that both her and Keir Starmer share. They don't go into a room, whether that's the House of Commons or an interview with Ben Riley Smith, knowing what the headline is. They should know what is it they want from their appearances, which are public appearances. And Kemi Badenoch should have wanted Keir Starmer looking weaselly, awkward, inauthentic on WASPI women. Your party Angela Rayner sitting next to you
Yeah.
said this.
She
Liz
said X.
Kendall
She
said
said
this.
Y. Yes.
You said this. Your party.
Yeah.
What are you going to say now? And then you would have had to defend about the WASPI women. What Keir Starmer was able to do, because she asked multiple questions in each question, was avoid the WASPI women question.
He didn't answer any of the
No.
questions. He's terrible at answering questions at PMQs. It may as well just be called Prime Minister's musings. It's not answering anything at all. Just a bit of YouGov polling on Kemi Badenoch asked whether the newly minted Conservative leader looked like a Prime Minister. Just 15% said she did. 47% said she didn't. She hasn't made much of an impact.
Look, it's been a month. We've talked about Kemi a lot. I think we're both in slightly different places. I've give her a bit more time, but I think she's got to choose. No, sorry, you want to give her time, but you don't think it's been a strong. I think she needs to decide on big moments, not very many, that make a real difference to the debate, not this sort of constant attempts at sort of drive-by shootings at different stories. It doesn't work in getting your message across to the
Also,
voters.
don't talk about steak lunches and sandwiches and roast bread, because it just is a distraction.
Lunch is for wimps, Camilla, as we all know.